welcome to another episode of The Spotlight. I'm very, very excited this morning, in case you can't tell, because I get to introduce you to, if you don't already know her, Dr. Lauren Pichard, who her work is very, very exciting to me because it's not very often that you meet a licensed clinical psychologist that understands the power of woo-woo. And a hybrid like Dr. Lauren is a rare unicorn. And we get to ask her all kinds of questions for the next 30 minutes. So yay! Awesome. So let me bring her on screen now because she's already laughing at me. Hello, Dr. Lauren. How are you?
I'm better now that I've been called a unicorn already this morning. Thank you.
Awesome. So, let's just start out with the biggest question that I have in my head, and that is, how did you come to understand that in terms of psychology, the body-mind-spirit connection is more powerful than the mind-body connection?
Totally. So I guess I'll start with, I was kind of always interested in this stuff. I grew up, my dad had studied the Silva method, which was called Silva mind control back then, but it has a weird connotation. Mm-hmm. So he was always kind of going into meditation, and into level is what it's called in their terminology. Mm-hmm. And in high school, I was always just drawn to kind of like the supernatural, new age section of Barnes and Noble, and would like buy books. As a teenager, I'd like get into fights with my mom. I think I was I was prepubescent and she was like premenopausal. And so that was like just a beautiful clash,
That's dangerous.
Yeah, it was super dangerous. So I would then go like meditate with like the creative visualization techniques, and I'd be like, wow, I like brought light in through the top of my head and through my whole body, and I'm not hysterical anymore. I feel so much better. But I didn't have anybody around me telling me this is real, right? So I was practicing these techniques. I was starting to kind of experiment with noticing different vibrations and frequencies. Like I'd play a game by myself. Like, I wonder if I can guess, like at school or at a party, I wonder if I can guess who's coming up behind me by just feeling their frequency before I look at them. And I'd get accurate, right? Because if you keep practicing it, you're kind of using that tool. Mm-hmm. And then I went into graduate school, and they were like, if you believe you're psychic, you're crazy. If you have a patient that believes they're psychic, they're crazy. And so I got like completely squashed for like 5-6 years while I was working on it. And then I worked at the, world-renowned Betty Ford Center, and I was, Dr. Peter Preskop had a pain management program, and he was integrating Chinese medicine and Qigong healing with the pain management. And he like put his hand on my back and he's like, oh, you feel judged here because I'm not in recovery, but I was working with recovery, and most therapists are. He's like, do you want me to remove the judgment? I was like, how did he do that? Like, whoa.
No, and right? I gotta interrupt you there, because that is a real phenomenon. When you are in recovery and you're recovering from something, there's a huge barrier between being able to listen to somebody who book learned it, if you will, and somebody who has suffered it, right? It makes 12-step all that more powerful, but it also takes away some of the healing that can be done by actual clinical hypnotherapy or therapy of whatever sort, right? And I just wanted to pull that out.
Totally. And a lot of the therapists there and psychologists were in recovery, right? A lot of the doctors are in recovery. Now, there's addiction in my family. It just happens to not be me. Right. Yeah. So for me, working at the Betty Ford Center and learning more about the disease of addiction, I did my postdoc there. Nice. And I had worked 12-step programs too, but I'll give them a shout out. I think they do a really good job of really educating people and families and doing really good rehabilitation work there. So it was a healing journey for me too, being there. Yeah. And it wakened up that part of me of, oh my goodness, like, we can combine these things, right? Because I was interested in the psychology of the near-death experiences, right? And all those different things, but I was cautious to kind of give myself permission out of fear of the judgment associated with it.
Right.
And so being exposed to a very professional setting that was doing this, I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to go dive back into that, which I did. I'm going to say pretty hardcore because I've studied lots of modalities, kind of looking for the secrets of life and how to heal people very quickly. And then I've just been integrating it ever since.
That's phenomenal stuff. I am loving all of that people are finally opening up to, that these things can be blended, right? And each discipline has its own values and its own shortcomings, right? So whatever it is that you can like dive into and go, hey, what does this do? How does this work? How can I use it to help healing? Bravo to you. I mean, we need at least 100,000 more people like you out there right now.
I think they're coming.
I think so too. So you do this one of those modalities that you do is called family constellation healing. I've never heard of this before. Tell us all about it.
Okay, family constellation is my absolute favorite right now because it heals attachment and it heals the family soul. So it actually comes from the Zulu tribe in Africa.
Okay.
And it's how they honored their ancestors. And it is one of the many kind of metaphysical, spiritual ways to turn off the genetics that turned on disease.
Oh, wow.
So I've seen it, shift cancer, for instance. Because the Bible talks about how we inherit the sins of our ancestors, and Eastern traditions will call it karma. Family constellation calls it family entanglements.
Okay.
And so it's a group healing oftentimes. That's how it was done traditionally, although lots of practitioners have modified it so that it can be done one-on-one over the phone. I've been doing it a lot in sessions. Like I have a couple that I work with, and so we'll stand in place of multiple roles, and you intuit what you feel, right? You intuit if you stand in the role for somebody. So let's see. So let me tell you the story about a woman that was concerned with breast cancer. She had a lump that was being biopsied. Okay. And so the facilitator had someone else stand in for her, and they noticed what it felt like to be her. So it's healing to see someone mirror your experience. Oh, I'm scared. I feel alone. And they had someone stand in for her mother to start to be the ancestral line. And this person didn't feel anything. So another person came in and stood in for the grandmother, and then the great-grandmother, and then the great-great-grandmother. None of these people felt anything. And then he had someone at the end be just a strong woman in the ancestral line. And the person was like, oh, I feel guilty. And so it was going through and resolving this woman's guilt, and it wound up being with God. He put the woman who had the diagnosis was feeling scared and alone, so they put God behind her, someone to stand in for God. And at the end, the ancestor who felt guilty was on her knees sobbing, begging God for forgiveness.
Oh, wow.
So it's resolving this deep, deep, deep stuff that we can find in a shamanic journey, and we can resolve it. But there's something about doing it as a group and witnessing it together. Yeah. And then, kind of like the law of attraction, the person that was standing in for the ancestor probably had it in one of her past lives or in her ancestry also. So she was healing it for herself while also holding space for another person and everybody else in the room.
Wow.
Right. So it's a fun way to connect with other people. So I love it.
Have fun connecting with people while you heal generational trauma. I love it. Well,
I know it's my idea of fun, but
honestly, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes as you were describing that. I'm a little worried about my mascara at the moment.
No, you gotta wear waterproof mascara around me. Everybody knows that.
Right? That's phenomenal stuff. And one of the things that occurred to me as you were talking about it was like, as all of these other people that are standing in for people, right? And feeling or not feeling certain things. I would imagine that it's very validating to see someone picking up on that empathically, that energy, and it makes it real. It's not, oh, my hormones are setting off certain thought patterns in my head, I'm broken. Oh, I think this, but it can't possibly be real, right? I'm broken.
Right.
And you actually get to see other people going, and you're going, yeah, who, what? It's real.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when you say validating, that's kind of what I mean by mirroring, right? Because when we're connected with somebody, when someone like gets us and we feel seen, I can't even explain like why that's so healing, but that's the moment that we're not alone anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And that the burden is kind of being supported by somebody else.
Yeah. And that, honestly, that, for me anyway, that in landmark education, they call that getting got. Like, you get me, right? And it is so, it's not necessarily comforting, but it is, right? Because you know that you've been seen by that other person, that you know that you've been, that everything that you are feeling in this moment is accepted by that other person, whether they like it or not is completely out of the question, but you feel accepted. And that, I think, is the most peace-giving gift that we can give anybody, right?
Yep, totally. I agree.
One of the people that was talking to me lately, and she's like, how do you deal with your partner, right? He's awesome, but yeah, we were bitching about things. And she's like, how do you deal with that? And it's like, I have to accept him as he is and as he's not. Only then does he have access to shift anything for himself, because if I don't accept him the way that he is or the way he's not, he's distracted by pushing against what I'm not accepting, right? That I'm acceptable. Nope, can't accept that about you. I'm acceptable. And there's a dance of demons, if you will. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a rant because I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, but there's another, so how the Hawaiians address that actually, right? Like traditional Hawaiian mysticism is they can look at it in two ways. And so one is similar to what you're saying, like, why are we co-creating this? Right? So what's my responsibility in co-creating this? And so the Hawaiians teach, if you take radical responsibility for everything, now you're empowered to change, right? So if you believe you're a victim to something, which is like a whole nother topic I could go into,
right?
You're not going to be able to change anything. But if you're like, this chronic pain or this person is showing up this way, because, we all show up a little bit differently with everybody. And so why am I co-creating this with this person instead of co-creating something else?
Right.
So that's where the Ho'oponopono tradition comes in, because it cleans up that co-creation.
Nice.
But another way to look at it, you've probably heard, right? When there's one finger pointed out, there's three pointed back to you.
Right.
Right? So whatever it is about our partner that's driving us crazy, what is that in my own shadow?
Yes.
Right? And it could be the wounding, because the childhood wound, we marry somebody that's the good and the bad of our primary caregivers. So sometimes it's inner child work that needs to be healed around all that.
Right. One of the things that I found so valuable when I was going through my recovery is somebody told me, whatever you're mad about, you're not mad about that. You're not really mad about that. That's what it's safe to get mad about. What are you really mad about? And almost always it comes back to anger at ourselves for allowing this situation to occur or co-creating this situation with the others. And, when you can actually take it all the way back to yourself and resolve that self-directed anger, it's amazing what falls away.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I believe that anger is a way to let us know that someone's trying to cross our boundary. So I use it as like a signal to be like, all right, time to set a boundary there. And then sometimes it's just arguing with the universe for something not being the way that we want it to be. Right?
Our little temper tantrums.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's awesome stuff. Now, one of the things Well, first of all, before I step off to that, I want to like kind of bring that back to the recovery conversation, because
Sure.
that is that first step, right?
It's admitting that we're powerless.
Yeah. Well,
To
and
like
here's the
anger and
thing.
stuff.
You got to have the whole first step in there, right? That in my addiction, I became powerless over myself and my behavior. Okay. So that's the acceptance of what's so, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When I take this drug, when I drink this drink, I lose control of myself. I lose my power of determination. I lose my reaction time, you know? And
Totally.
that you have to have that space of, okay, here's what's so, before you can move on to the next step and go, hey, there's something out there that can help me, right?
Right. Right.
And it really is that simple when it comes
Yes.
down to it. Awesome
Yeah.
stuff. Now I'm very much into veterans recovering from PTSD, and I know the statistics aren't even accurate anymore when we talk about 22 a day, 23 a day, all of that. You have in your toolbox a process that can remove suicidal ideation in about 10 minutes.
So I wouldn't say it always does, but
Okay.
I will say that it has. So, trauma is complex, as you know. And, a lot of the vets that have suicidal ideation, they also have traumatic brain injury, which creates more gray matter in the brain, and it impacts the thought processes. But
Okay.
when I work with people, I work with the 4 bodies. So it's the spiritual body, mental body, emotional body, and physical body. One of the things that intensifies, and I'm going to talk about a couple things, but so the spiritual body is fire, mental body is air, emotional body is water, physical body is earth. Water molecules attract other water molecules.
Right. Okay.
So if we have trauma inside our body, or anxiety inside our body, or depression inside our body, and then we walk into a space that has a matching energy, that matching energy is going to come in and intensify our experience.
Okay.
Right? Or sometimes it's another person. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so much anxiety off of that person. What's going on? I don't want to be around them. Well, they're heightening our own anxiety that is inside of us, right? So some of it is about keeping our field clean, right, so that it doesn't get too intense. But, shamanically, people talk about soul retrievals. And so I did have one person that I worked with who was like, I almost committed suicide this weekend. And then I went into like, what? You didn't call me? Like, this is what I'm here for, But we started talking, and we realized that the part of him that could have fun left a long time ago, because he wasn't having any fun, right? So I just want to give you guys a little bit more background before I go into like how I helped him heal himself. But let's say when we're born, we're this perfect round ball, right? This kind of represents like our energetic system. Most people that have PTSD, because this actually happened to be what my dissertation was on.
Okay.
So most people that have PTSD, it's heightened based on their childhood. So most people that have PTSD, it's because their energy field already went splat, right, through injury, through, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse. So now when you take this splat energy and you go into a war zone, all this intense experience is hitting the core of a person. Okay. And so the inner child work really helps there, right? Because you got to heal the core beliefs that were formed in childhood. Right. Because if this is believing that the world is safe, and then you go to war and you're like, okay, war is an exception to the rule of safety, you have more resiliency factors. But if you were abused and the world was unsafe and you can't trust anybody, and now you go into a war zone, that's a very intense experience. Yeah. Right. So it sounds cliche to be the therapist that's like, well, what was your childhood like? But you got to bring that core in. Yeah. Right. So it is about removing the energies from war out of somebody's space, pulling the cords out from it, and then healing that inner child and giving kind of safe experiences to bring a person back to wholeness.
Yeah.
But now this person was in an abusive kind of situation, you know, didn't have a great childhood, was kind of trapped there, and their resiliency was their neighbor, right? This is like a little boy, right? The resiliency was hanging out the neighbor, and then he had a dream that the neighbor was moving, and then the next day found out that the neighbor was moving.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so the part of him that could have fun left. It was like, forget it. And so now he's going through life without that part of his soul that could have fun, right? It kind of just split, like, right? And so we did a healing with imagery, you know, and we just called that part back.
Nice.
And it's so interesting because the unconscious mind knows all of this stuff. And it just happens to be, he like starts telling you about this dream, and, you know, and the next thing we know, we're doing this imagery to heal that part of himself, pull it back into him. And then he felt better ever since, because now he can go and experience fun again in life.
Right. That's an amazing stuff. And my mind is just blowing up right now, because one of the things that we learn about heroin, for example, is that when it connects with your cells, it connects with that happiness receptor, and then it changes that receptor so nothing else can ever fit in it except for heroin again. Right?
I did not know that, but that's interesting.
It's amazing stuff. So that's one of the reasons why heroin is so deadly, is because when people come off of it, right, they can't get happy. They can't feel joy.
Right.
And the only way they get access to that, to any kind of happiness, is to take that drug again. So relapse after relapse, trying to just be happy in life. So yeah, but it's similarly, right? If you've got something where, you know what, it's just too risky to have fun. Bad stuff happens, or I lose my best friend, or I'm disappointed. It completely makes sense to me that our spirit could like close off that part of us to protect us from getting hurt again. But it never really goes anywhere, does it? It's like, it's just deactivated, right?
You know, it depends on which viewpoint you look at it from. So, I mean, at some level, the whole universe is inside our unconscious mind, right? So therefore, if our unconscious mind is that big, of course it never goes anywhere, because it's all just a representation of us.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll agree with you based on that, instead of splitting hairs over the different theoretical orientations. Yeah.
Right. I find in a lot of cases it's a lot of it's a different language to get to the same thing to be said.
Yes, and that's actually part of what I study, right? So is like what they call it in psychology versus what they call it in different spiritual traditions, and then how do you heal it? And then it's like, which toolbox do I want to use, right? What am I in the mood for today, or what resonates with this person that I'm working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, we are done with our time, technically speaking. And one of the reasons I love doing this in this format is that it's not a 30-minute podcast or a 1-hour podcast. If we're having fun talking, we can keep going if you've got time. Because I want you to talk to me a little bit, if you don't mind, about what you're offering our audience today, because this is so needed right now. A COVID-19 energy healing sounds pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, so COVID-19 energy healing, I'm giving that as a free download with the promo code ImmunityFree. And so I do want to talk a little bit about my experience when I first, when the lockdowns first started happening last March, because it goes into kind of the trauma and the PTSD stuff too, and recovery, a trigger. Right? Yeah. When we are triggered, if we're in recovery, we're going to probably go use. If we're a video game addict, we might go zone out, which isn't the most dangerous coping skill unless it starts interacting with our marriage or work or something like that. So a trigger to me is when we are having a more intense experience than somebody else would have for the same thing, or if we know that the experience isn't congruent with what the situation is. So I kind of call it pouring salt on a wound, right? So salt is, and it burns, and it's like, oh, I'm on fire. Why am I burning so much? So when the lockdown started happening, I was experiencing this intense fear. And I was going, I'm actually not really that afraid of this. So what is going on right now? Right? Like, where is this coming from? Like, and I started looking for answers of where it's coming from. And so two things happened. One was I was recording a healing, and I realized that it was like, when my mom was pregnant with me, they were concerned. She was popping positive or inconclusive for a test, and they thought that I might be retarded, so they were questioning if they wanted to keep me. And so part of it I healed in the shifting to the matching energy of your goals. I was recording it, and I saw this energy come down, so I healed it for everybody on that recording coming through the mom. So it was like her stress, and I realized, gosh, I'm afraid something bigger than me is going to come destroy me, which was kind of what was getting magnified, right? So that was the trigger, that core in the womb wound. So I resolved that. But then I was like, why am I like, this is more intense fear. So I started meditating. And when I meditate, I connect with God, and I kind of just let that nice energy flow down to me. And I couldn't get through. And I was going, what is going on here? There was some energy that was stopping me from getting through.
Okay.
And so I was like, this is weird. So there was like a fear frequency in the universal consciousness. This was my experience of it. And then I don't remember if it was the same day or a couple hours later, a light came from the other side, and I started getting a healing frequency coming in, and I started having shifts in my stomach. It was pretty amazing, actually. So then I was like, gosh, I wonder how many other people have this kind of intense fear and don't understand what a trigger is and don't understand how to resolve it. So the shifting to healthy immunity audio download helps get rid of fear. It helps. So karma, the way karma works is if we have a matching vibration to something, we'll get hooked in repeating it, right? So kind of what Sigmund Freud says, what we don't remember, we're doomed to repeat. So if one of our ancestors or us maybe died of a plague in a past life, we might be more prone to then dying from something in a plague in a current life, right? So it's resolves some of those matching frequencies. It helps change our relationship to COVID-19 by kind of looking at it, looking at us, bringing it up to God, neutralizing the energy, and then giving blessings for health. There's a miracle prayer healing in there.
Nice. That's quite value packed. Thank you very much in advance on behalf of the people that will be downloading this. And just so that I've got it on the audio, we've got the address on Ticker, and that's ascensionpsychology.com/shop/uncategorized/shifting healthy immunity mindset. And there are dashes between that last word, shifting immunity mindset. Awesome. So please go out there, get that. You will definitely benefit from it. I know myself, I'm going to do that myself, and I don't do everybody's freebies as the host. I'd be ping-ponging all over the place.
The meditation you can use for different things. Even if you're not afraid of COVID or don't have COVID, it'll still get some of the things out there that could help heal your life in different ways. Right. So,
well, I'm not afraid of COVID. I don't have COVID, but I am an empath. And when especially the United States, when the United States gets upset about something, I get wonky. So regardless of if I'm afraid of COVID, enough people in America are afraid of COVID that it's impacting me, and anything that I can do to go, dude, it's going to be all right.
Totally. So what I'd recommend for you there, Gayle, in the Kiave meditation, which comes from the Hawaiian tradition, when you're looking at the dichotomies, I would put yourself on the one side and then like the Americans or the American government on the other side. so that you can then balance those energies and maybe not take it all on.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that very, very much. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Like, we could talk for hours. I could just ask you questions for weeks.
We'll have to go out sometime.
We do. We should do that. Yes, you're one of my bucket list people for visiting in person as soon as hugs are legal again.
Awesome.
Do you have any final thoughts for our audience before we send them on their way this week?
Well, there's a couple of things that I have coming up in case people are interested. So I have some psychology trainings that any kind of a healer or anyone that kind of wants to understand a deeper level. I'm going to be doing some Zoom training soon. And then we're thinking about doing couples healing retreat on Zoom, but I kind of would rather do it live. So if anyone is interested in attending the couples retreats, they are welcome to kind of email me, because I'm trying to get a feel for like what people want, if they want to leave the country, if they want something in the country, if they want to do it live, if they want it in Zoom. So if people feel like they have a need for that, and we're trying to keep it small, like 6 to 8 couples. And I'm going to be co-facilitating that with Dr. Aditi. So that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again very much for being with us, and thank you to the audience for watching. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you.
Remember to like, comment, and share this video, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube, please, GayleNicholson.com, and have a phenomenal weekend. See you again.
Gayle.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren.
Thanks.
Bye.
When you open yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life? I can show you how.